listening to the Questionnaire.
Say that again.
You're listening to the Questionnaire.
I've just started.
Right here, for your ears, for your eyes.
The Questionnaire.
Get your comic on.
Poke it out, poke it out, poke it out, poke it out.
You know, we're all very much the same, you and I. Yeah, and in that, I hope it's the fact that you love comic books, ladies and gentlemen. I am the unknown factor. This is the Questionnaire, right? You know, and what are we going to get into today? Well, I don't know. Really, I don't even think I'm supposed to be here today, right? Because we got Dave over doing a live, right, over on the Facebook. I got to make sure I share that, talking about this week in comics and what came out, right? I'm not going to tell you what came out this week right now, because then you'll figure out how long it takes me to edit things. And Scott Wojcik, I don't want him to know how long it takes me sometimes to edit things, man.
A couple weeks.
Hey. I look, it depends, man. Sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's a 2, sometimes I try to keep it less than that. But look, I like to think it's been a pretty epic quest over here. You know, we're just in a bit of a transition period with this gentleman right here, Scott, actually taking over the booking. So if you see Scott around and you want to be on the show, I mean, bug him, I guess. You know,
shoot me a message.
Right. Hit him up. We'll make it happen. Right. We got a lot in the works. Man. So much. Scott, you should have played that game, man. You should have played D&D. No.
Oh, I didn't want to step on that.
Look. Whatever. You were in the original group that was talking about even doing it in the first place. All right. And I'm telling you.
Stranger Things?
Alan Henry came to play, yeah, but another gentleman who plays in so many universes on so many different levels is someone we're going to have to pick the mind of on this particular quest right here. And that, yeah, would be John Delaney, man. And look, John, all I got to say is I'm annoyed. Scott's kid stole one of my questions.
You can ask it again.
Like,
I knew that was going to happen too.
Like, how's your kid gonna steal one of my questions, man? Hold on, I gotta share this this week in comics real quick with Dave. Yeah, you know, because he's sitting over there talking about what came out this week. But man, John, what made you dig into what you did? There have been so many interesting stories before we even started this show, discussing so many things fairly intricately, including the Futurama and Simpsons, the similarities, the dissimilarities, what separates them. I recommend you all go check out the Patreon. It's going to be a heck of a pre-show. There's some really good pre-shows over there, to be real honest, between Erica and Fabian and then this one right here and Howard's with Shiro, and there's some stories over there on the pre-show for the Patreon, man. It's only $2 a month. Come on, I'm just saying, right? Plus, if you just become a member, you can see the answers of everyone's pre-show questionnaire, right? And that's just by becoming a member. You ain't even got to pay me no money, right? Just be a member, and you can see the pre-show questionnaires. You got to pay me money for the before and after. I'm sorry, right? But John, what do you think of that, man? As far as in the semantics of that, you have dealt with so many things in the shuffling of releases of DVDs and the releasing of extra bits. What do you think that serves nowadays as opposed to when it did, 15 years ago? Because if you think 15, 20 years ago, look, I got a DVD that's a blah, 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 and it's got a commentary. And that was something that was held with like, oh, that's really, really cool. I don't feel like it is so much anymore.
Well, I don't think that it's become less cool per se. It's become much more familiar. People are far more savvy now than they were 15 years ago because we didn't have access to that information. And one of the neat things about what happened with commentary and sort of a general understanding of film was the directors, producers, myself when I was working on, say, like Voltron Force or Chaotic, we were giving away some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that people just weren't really aware of. But now we've become aware of it. We've become a little more savvy and understanding about how film gets made, the time it takes, how animation is produced, what goes into it. So while it may seem like, oh, that seems repetitive or derivative, it's really not. It's just the way that these things are done. And we as an audience have become so much more savvy and so much more aware of it that the questions that we want to ask are far more in depth than what is generally asked by, the person who's feeding you questions when they're asking you for the DVD commentary and things like that. So one of the things that I've really enjoyed about, say, Quentin Tarantino's latest commentary is the way he will actually go into why he filmed something, or why he chose that camera, or why he chose that lens. And so I find that quite invigorating. Whereas if you look at the original commentary on Pulp Fiction, it's pretty banal. It basically tells what he's thinking. The second one that he did is fantastic. It's a real big deep dive, and I think the audience becoming so much more aware has made those things. It's really important that we don't, for lack of a better term, patronize or talk down to the audience. That we share information because the audience has become quite aware.
Do you think that's taken away aspect of the magic? You know what I mean? That it's because everyone's seen so much behind the curtain at this point.
Well, yeah, to a certain degree, but they don't necessarily have the ability to do that. They can understand it. It's like somebody can explain to me quantum physics, and I can go, oh yeah, but to come up with it, like to actually, be able to fathom the depth of that takes a lot more work. So while someone might say, this is how we did it, and you can now have a conversation with your friend saying, well, I know they did that, being able to execute that, being able to actually have the ability to go, this is how we'll do it, that's a very different thing. And I've seen that on time and time again on live action film sets where, I'm working as a storyboard artist with the director, and we're kind of coming through a thing, and then I'm on set, and you see how many people are asking questions that they just don't kind of understand that, because that's why he's a director, or that's why I'm a director, or that's why I'm a storyboard artist, because we have that understanding. So it becomes much more about finding the right people with the right understanding for the right project, and that's what makes a project go so well. You look at the way the Russo brothers did the Avengers and Captain America: Civil War. They understood the concept of it more than some of the other previous directors did, where they were trying to say, oh, I get the character. They don't necessarily understand the character in the vast concept of the way that works in the Marvel universe, where the Russos did. And so once you get that sort of thing, then you go, okay, this is where it really, really hits. This is where it really glows. You look at what Matt Reeves did with the Batman. There's lots of iterations of Batman, but that slow walk out in the rain where his feet are too, rather than having Batman running into the scene and all that scary Batman, the fact that he cast so many short actors as cops, so when Robert Pattinson's walking past them, he's, like this much taller than all of them. That's just that insight, that understanding of saying, this is why Batman is scary in the comics. And you can't have a guy who, Michael Keaton is a fantastic Batman, but he's short. So cast around him to make that work, With Robert Pattinson, he's a tall guy, but they put boots on him like this thick, so he's taller, and it makes it intimidating. Now it's a guy in a costume that looks scary, not a guy in a costume that you go like, what? Wouldn't I more laugh at that? So that understanding is, that concept of saying, yeah, I know how it's done, but now I know how to make it better. I know how to implement all those ideas into making something unique and original.
Do you think that now that the commentary and those behind the scenes stuff is more readily available, do you think it's created more inspiration for younger generation to move in and create stuff that's much better?
I hope so. I don't know if you guys know the online Tubi, the network. So Tubi runs enormous amounts of B movies, guys who don't have any kind of a budget, but there's passion, and like some of them are, terrible. And I love watching terrible movies, and because nobody starts off making a terrible movie. They all start off with the grand idea of making something great. It usually becomes a terrible movie because you run out of money, or you were being loftier in your ability to budget. You're going, oh, I got $1 million budget. Well, your effects are going to cost $1 million. So understanding those sort of things, that's what really defines the novice filmmaker who says, I have some great ideas, right? Like a person who wants to be Quentin Tarantino and a Quentin Tarantino, that ability to go, I know that it works within a budget. And one of the things that Tarantino's famous for, or Scorsese, and I mean, Scorsese's fallen off it a couple times, but is that ability to work on budget and be able to say, by doing this, I know how to make this film. And here's where I'll cut out those things. I watched a recent anniversary special on Rocky, and he's talking about the skating scene, the skating rink scene. And Sylvester Stallone, of course, is writing the film as the film is being made because he had a full working script. But he gets to the skating scene, and it's supposed to be a scene where Adrian's actually a pretty good skater, and Rocky isn't, and he's stumbling along next to her. And there's all these good skaters, kind of swinging around, and they're kind of banging into her. So Rocky has this confrontation with the thing. Well, they get to the thing, and director says, we had a problem with the extras. And Stallone says, well, what do you mean? He goes, we have none. So Stallone rewrites it. So it's this beautiful scene between Rocky and Adrian, and he tells Talia Shire, who could skate, you can't skate well. You have to, this is something your brother told me. And he's taking her on her first date, and she can't skate. And it's this beautiful scene where it develops this love story. That the story first is an underdog story, and suddenly becomes this beautiful love story. So that's a happy accident that can happen when you get on to a situation like that. And so those kind of commentaries allow you to see behind the curtain in the way that the difficulties they had at the time, but it doesn't always necessarily show you how they solved them. And how they solve them comes down to experience, comes down to creativity, comes down to passion for the project and the ability to say, there's a way to make this work. And I know it, just give me a second, and you run into the trailer and you scribble things down. And because I've been on set, where the director will say to me, hey man, can we do a quick storyboard of this? And I'm going, oh yeah, that's different than we talked about. He goes, yeah, I know, that's because the bar is flipped around. We can't do that scene the way we wanted. So you're doing this quick scribble, thing, and you pull it, great, and now you're showing it to the DP, and you're going through these things, and we're solving it. On the commentary, it's just, we were into the bar, and that's all you're explaining. You're not explaining what happened all the way to get to that bar. So there's a lot of things that the commentaries don't necessarily tell you, and that's why, as much as I love seeing young filmmakers make their bones and get films out, and there is so much opportunity for them to get those films out now, one of the things I want to say to those young filmmakers is, it's not a terrible thing to wait a year to fix it than to just get it out because you think that you've run out of money. Find another way to get some more of that money, get that shot that you wanted, get those, the things that link it together. I see so many things like on Tubi where, the guy's banging at the door and you're going, you can't get in. And the next thing he's walking to the house, you're going, what the hell? I need that moment, right? To show how he got in, even if it's just a close up of the hand, and he breaks the lock, something like that. But that's that young filmmaker. They go, well, they'll get the ideas. He got in. And you're going, it's not that simple.
I'm curious, do you think the adaptability that's necessary in filmmaking, as far as for when you come across those moments, and whether it's the purpose of the set, you don't have extras, whatever, you have to adapt. Do you think that adaptability is as important in film as it is in, say, animation or comic books?
Well, that's a great question, by the way. So I've worked in animation a lot. I've worked in live action, and the difference is we developed the idea of storyboards in animation because there is no retakes in animation. We don't just film and say, okay, we're going to take a retake or we're going to cut that shot. Like everything is timed out exactly how long we're going. That's why we do storyboards, right? So animation is I'm glad you're laughing because it's true. Animation
I know because look, I'm laughing, John, because imagine like them trying to take 6 takes in animation, like they're literally animating it 6 times. Like what?
You're literally bringing the crew back after they've already let them go, and like it's an entire crew. It's like 250 people working on animation, right? So you're not just bringing back an actor with a camera. Let's get a close up. That's somebody redrawing the close up, recoloring it, retesting it, time coding it, all that stuff. Like it's amazing. So storyboards began in animation and it started getting used in live action because it was such a sensible way. The Fleischers were doing storyboards, as was Disney. Disney started off doing story sketch. So they had large scenes, so they sort of set it up. Fleischers were the ones who actually started doing frame to frame to frame. This is how we're going to do it. Because once you could time out a frame to frame, you knew exactly how long your shots were going to be. And you could give them to the animator and say, you've got 3 seconds to do this, right? So it's a very different thing. So live action is can be much more whim based, where you're going, you know what, I think let's do another shot over here. That doesn't happen in animation. There's no, I think we could do, no, it's already locked down. This is what we're doing, right? So as a director, a guy who's directed a lot of animated films and cartoons, I'm very aware of that those decisions have to maybe be made long before they get to the animators. So we workshop all that stuff, and we kind of get through and go, look, this will be a great shot. And so if I'm working with storyboard artists or if I'm doing it myself, going back and forth, I'm going, yeah, that's cool. That's a neat shot. I know I wanted to make that shot, but is it serving the show? Is it serving the piece that goes to it next and that, or is it just a vanity shot that I thought, ooh, I'd like a high angle here? Well, it doesn't serve anything. So you have to be much more disciplined. Whereas a director on film, if you're not too worried about blowing your budget, you can do lots of things. But if you're a little more disciplined, you'll say, I have it sort of locked down. So I've done a lot of work with Chris Carter and with Dan Sackheim and they're very locked down directors. They know exactly what they want to do by the time we even are starting to talk about storyboarding. So they're laying it out. I might have a few suggestions. They're going, yeah, that's cool, and we'll implement those things. But they're very, very locked down. And most really accomplished directors are. They know what they want to do.
That's really cool. Like, it's funny because I wanted to do some research on you, John, and see what you've all kind of worked on. And I don't think anywhere in any of the stuff that I looked at said that you worked on animation or live action.
Well, if you go to IMDb, you'll see a lot,
Okay.
Predominantly, if you go just today on Google, it's mostly my comic book stuff. There's some of my music, that I played with bands and stuff like that. But if you go to IMDb, you can see the credits. I mean, I've worked on so many cartoons and directed so many things. And, and I've worked as a second unit director on some live action stuff too. So I've had quite a bit of experience. I'm currently working on a documentary film right now. I have a real passion for it, but I'm predominantly known for the comic book work, and I'm very happy to be known for that. I'm very proud of the work. One of the things that's cool about comic books is it's a singular vision, or at least a dual vision between you and the writer. The writer gives you this thing, and now you're not only the director, you're the cinematographer, you're the light guy, you're everything. You're picking all those angles. So yeah. I use my background in film and television to do comic books that way. So if, say, I'm working on something like a Superman Adventures, which should look exactly like how Bruce Timm designed it, and I want to honor that. I want to show that to the fans. But those angles, the way I'm choosing it, that's me directing my own Superman film.
That's really cool.
It really is intriguing to think about the properties that you've worked on. There are so many that already they already have a fan base that is outside of comic books.
Absolutely.
What do you think about that as far as crossing that fan base and getting, because look, there are so many people that have watched Futurama, that have watched The Simpsons, and I guarantee you they've never held a floppy in their hand. All right. I mean, I'm just sincerely.
I would say this: the Futurama fans are more likely to have a lot of comics. I did a Comic-Con in Belgium, and like a lot of the Futurama fans who love the show have every one of the comics. That, for some reason, that world, specifically Futurama, really opened up the idea to the comics were an addendum to those stories. Whereas with The Simpsons, you don't necessarily ever need to read a comic to ever get a Futurama or a Simpsons story. You know it from the TV show. But the comic books in Futurama really explored that universe a little bit more. And we all worked within the confines of what was structured. And it really allowed us to tell a lot of stories that are hinted at in some of the latter episodes. They don't, say this happened there, but there is acknowledgement of it. And that's a kind of a really cool thing, the idea that those two worlds sort of exist. But yes, you're right. Most people who know those things don't necessarily know the comic, but the ones who do, man, they are hardcore.
I'll be honest, man, I always loved Futurama, but I don't know, like I have this.
Nice.
All right, did you work on this?
Yeah.
I love that I have your work in my comic book collection, and I'm not over it.
No, it's a funny thing. What happens a lot of times too, especially when I was at DC, I would often get somebody who was up and coming, who was really good, and I won't say their names because they ended up becoming like massively big, but they were having difficulties with things like covers. And so at that time, when I was doing, say, Adventures in the DC Universe, which kind of based on the Superman, Batman universe, but they hadn't done Justice League yet. So I was exploring with the ideas, because I had an animation background, about what would Wonder Woman look like in animation, what would Hawkgirl look like, those kind of things. So I would often get requests from editors saying, can you just do us a cover sketch? Because my guy's having a hard time. Covers are very intimidating for some artists, right? And for me, it's capturing a frame in a film, right? You go like, okay, cool, I'm going to do something here. So I did a lot of that kind of thing. And then that would play out to the artists. And some of the artists would really credit me. Howard Porter was wonderful about, I did a couple of JLA covers with him, and he always put my name in the credits. They didn't have to, because I was just doing a loose layout for them, and that was supposed to be their drawing. But he was very, very nice about doing things like that. I always really appreciated that. And I think you'd be surprised about how many times people who are comic book fans are very aware of the symmetry between those two things. And whereas the casual fan who's a Simpsons fan, I have families and kids run up to me because on the back of my banner at a Comic-Con, it's got director, designer, artist, comic book artist, all these things. So they'll start talking to me like as if I directed this particular episode they love. And so I always respond with, I love that episode too. And oh my gosh, didn't me, So we just talk about the episode. I don't, for a kid, you don't want to ruin that moment for them because they think, oh my gosh, right? And I don't want to go, I didn't do anything on that. I just talk about how great an episode it is. And then they finally get around to, well, did you work on it? I go, well, no, but I love it too. That kind of thing, right? So it's a nice chance for the two worlds to kind of collide in what I think is a very conventional and fun way, rather than for it to be one has more value than the other. One of them, Futurama, kept that idea of Futurama alive for years while the show wasn't on. We were still doing the comic book for years. So a lot of I've seen toys produced on things that we did in the comic that were never on the show, and that's a great thing. So there's a real symmetry there. I hope I answered that question correctly.
Yeah,
No,
no,
I agree, and it leads right into a point that was one of the three things that you'd like to discuss, which I certainly always find an interesting topic over here on any particular quest, regardless of who I'm discussing it with, which is the fact that comic books in and of themselves, look, 20 years ago, okay, it was the only way you were going to get the Hulk fighting Thor, and it looked like that, okay? It's not like that anymore. Now I'm pretty sure we're about to see Wolverine fight the Hulk here very, very shortly, or it's just dropped. I don't know. It depends on how quick my editing is. Shut up, Scott. All right. But yeah, so it's changed. But what do you think remains unique within comics now, as far as the storytelling aspect, especially with the introduction that we've had of man, what can't they do? Let's be honest. What can't they do on film?
Right.
Come on,
So
John. What can't they do?
So there's two things I'd like to answer that in two parts. One, they're only going to have the Hulk and Wolverine fight because it was in a comic. Like nobody else was asking for that if it hadn't been already introduced as an idea in the comic, right? So people are going otherwise people would never think that Wolverine would have anything to do with the Hulk. He was never in the X-Men movies, right? For the rank and file people, they just go, well, why is that important? But for the comic fans, they're going, I want to see Wolverine fight the Hulk. So it becomes self-prophecy. You go I saw that in the comics. I want to see it in the film. And the people making the film are going, this is important. So that's very, very important. The second part of it is that comic books have its own unique language that is very separate from film and very separate from literature. And that is the idea of imagery with dialogue combined and internal thought. You can see a movie where they try to put a narration that certainly has existed in film for a long, long time, but internal thought, the idea of a character thinking at the same time that they're talking, which is what we're doing now. I'm thinking about the next thing I want to say as I'm saying this, is unique to comics. That's a unique language. The idea even of a thought balloon that exists separately from a speech balloon are two different things. That's a unique language, and that doesn't exist anywhere else in any other kind of medium. So comics have that ability. So you can put an echoey voice on somebody thinking something, and it sounds like a soap opera. But when you see it in a comic and you naturally read it, it becomes that you're part of that character. You read it in their voice. My God, Jason, that kind of thing. He's not saying that out loud, but you get it.
Yeah, my one counterpoint to that is Dexter.
Well, Dexter to me felt like he was writing a log. And I didn't think it was an internal thought. It felt like a person who was doing the job that he did, he was always taking notes. Punisher War Journal worked well that way too. Even early Frank Miller, when he was doing Batman Year One, he was writing it like Batman was writing a journal. Love the way Matt Reeves has Batman narrating, and then you realize it's the journal he's keeping. That works in that convention, that sort of give. But a idea of a thought coming when it's actually happening, it's difficult to convey in film. If Batman gets hit by Superman, in a comic, he might go, oh, I forgot how tough he is. But you can't say that in the film, and you can't put that in a journal. It sounds weird, right? So it's a disconnect. Whereas comics, you can actually feel moments like that. Sometimes it can be, distorted to a point where it's absurd. Like I've seen some comics where like Batman's flying a plane and he's singing about, oh, Clark, he doesn't get this thing. As if he's ruminating on Clark at that point. He's flying his plane trying to get to the thing. So, writers can go off the mark on that and go like, wow, that's a lot of ruminating for and when he's fighting Killer Croc, is he really thinking to himself, poor Croc, he's, the victim. No, he's going, I've got to punch him here, I got to punch him there. That's what he's really thinking at that point. So there's that delicate balance of understanding how the internal monologue, the thought process goes. And really great writers, like guys like Grant Morrison, Garth Ennis to a certain degree, Tom King, certainly. They really understand that idea of that these two things operate at the exact same time. I can be saying something to you as a lie, and my mind is revealing the truth. That's beautiful writing.
I have to know, John, because look, Garth has been a favorite writer of mine for a long time. I would love to quest with him over here at the Questionnaire. I just got to say, time zones is also a pain in the ass. But and I've had the privilege of meeting him when I was like 15.
Yeah, it's amazing film.
Why do you say kind of?
Because Garth, this is just my opinion, and there's lots of people who feel differently than me, but I feel that Garth has such a disdain for a lot of the characters that he's writing that his goal is to more humiliate the idea of the character than it is to enhance the character. So he wants you to laugh at the character, and that's okay. That's real. I just don't particularly want to laugh at this character who I enjoy. He doesn't. He definitely has disdain. So that's okay, and I listen, man. I followed Preacher the whole run. I love it, no problem. I didn't really get into The Boys. It's one of those things where I get to the point where I'm going, the film, there's a reason that the television show took out a lot of that stuff because, while it's funny and absurd, and I'm not a prude by any stretch of the imagination. It's not like it offends me. It's just I'm going, this is stuff I've seen before. I know that you can do other things, and I just feel like he's gotten to that point where he's become Garth Ennis, and the fact that it's, this is a Garth Ennis book, rather than in the early days when he was writing, it was like this could be anything, and he's taking on doing something original and fantastic. It's now become, I'm Garth Ennis, so I do this, and that's not great for Garth Ennis because he's such a tremendous writer. So that's why I said sometimes. Grant Morrison is a guy who has been challenged numerous times with some real crap projects like Doom Patrol and turned them into some of the most sophisticated, incredibly intelligent ideas. He took Animal Man, a character that is it's a non-account character, and broke the fourth wall and did things that were fantastic. Alan Moore, he did the deconstruction of superheroes and Watchmen years and years ago, but still did it with a sense of hope and a sense of humanity that I think sometimes, just in my opinion, Garth has lost the sight of, because I think that there's a side of Garth Ennis that truly resents the idea of a superhero, and it shows in his work.
I mean, because he's done a lot of stuff that was war-based entirely, and that's entirely. I think there's an entirely different vibe to that. So I mean, maybe,
100%, and I love that stuff.
Yeah. Maybe you're right. Maybe he just resents superheroes. That would be interesting.
Well, he's not exactly quiet about it. He says it in interviews and that. I'm not speaking out of my ass here. Like he literally says these things. So I'm just quoting him. But to me, it's just a different point of view in the way that we see the subject matter of what we work on, and I respect his right to feel that way, and I'm sure he couldn't give a crap whether I respect or not, but I just, what you asked me why Garth Ennis, I'm such a big fan of his writing. Like when he was working on The Punisher, that was a really good fit for him because The Punisher is, by its very nature, a serial killer who happens to kill bad guys. He's still a serial killer. And Garth Ennis got that. He went, let me show the most absurd ways that he can kill people. Like horrible, terrible ways that he can kill people, torture, that to me, he was the perfect Punisher writer, because I never got the Punisher. I always went, this is a serial killer. Yeah, just because, something bad happened to him, he's going to kill every single one of these people that, and there are children and there are grandmothers in that he just blows through that thing. I don't get all the love. Garth Ennis got it. He went, yeah, because he's a fucking monster.
I do think, and that's the thing. I think if I look through Garth Ennis's work, because I think I initially found Garth Ennis as an author with The Darkness.
Yeah,
which is very,
that was cool.
Yeah. Well, and I love because there was a certain amount of satire within it and all of that. So I'm curious, with you two, how much do you like to play with satire? Because that's a very interesting dynamic to be able to play with, and I know Futurama did quite a bit of it as far as in that regard. Is that something that you enjoy, or is that something that you want to make sure that at least it's done properly? Because some satire, let's be honest, can be tiring.
And I think, like anything, if your goal is to tell a great story, you can use satire in such a beautiful way. You can use it in such a informative way that allows the reader to go, oh, I hadn't thought about that. That's kind of funny. But if your goal is to simply use satire, is your goal to be satirical, then you're missing out on the idea of why you're satirizing in the first place. Mad Magazine was a great example. They would do these amazing satires, but there was a love. Like when they did Charlie's Angel, the $6 Million Man, I remember one where he goes, we can build him stronger than he was before, better, faster. And the nurse goes, faster's not always better. That's funny, like that's satirical, but funny in the fact that you're still kind of drawing attention to it. So like I say, there's no rules for satire. I'm Canadian by my very nature. I love irony. I love satire. So I'm not offended by it. I just think there's a difference between satire and out malice. And I think, when your only goal is to shock or to disturb, and you think that's satire, that's not satire. That's shock and disturbing. Satire is clever. It's based on taking a premise and saying, if I satirize this and you see it and I see it, then we can both enjoy something where we go, I not only love this character, but I'm not afraid to see that character knock down a few pigs. That's why I love Futurama. That's why I loved working on it, because we satirized the hell out of stuff. Like that was, we any single time that somebody did anything in politics, we had a venue for which to, then approach it. Star Trek, you satire all the time for commentary on racism with the half black, half white. That's totally satirical. It makes no sense, but it tells a great story, and it uses satire to say how absurd it is that you would be, racially prejudiced. So there's lots of ways to use satire in a very fun, clever way, and there's also ways to go satire for the sake of satire. And for me, I like being challenged. I am an intelligent individual. I am erudite as much as I can be. I want to be spoken to that I'm an intelligent individual, not a moron who needs you to tell me your point of view.
All right, so Scott's kid stole one of my questions, and you can go check that out on the Patreon, right, on the pre-show. But I'm curious, let's take it to a different level on that. What is your favorite example of satire within Futurama?
Oh, okay, cool. That's a great one. I loved the heads in the jars. That very nature of the idea that we kept all these individuals alive in jars, in cabinets, that they would never be able to express anything beyond that singular idea that they had years and years and years ago. That's fucking genius.
It is.
Like Leonard Nimoy still talking about Star Trek years and years ago. He's in this cabinet. Richard Nixon holding on to the idea that he's got, like these old ideas, and then he becomes the president of the world. Like, that's just genius. That's satire and it's chef kiss. Like, you just go, I love the idea of just stopping these people from any growth whatsoever beyond what we knew them at that moment. And that's fun.
That's like dead on.
Yeah.
I mean, the head. Right. Yeah, the heads in the jars are classic. I can't argue. I Look, I'm a fan of Futurama. I could probably sit here and quote too many episodes for my own good. It's one of those shows you know, I was an adult film kid or an adult swim kid. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
So
100%.
so that was like that and Aqua Teen, but that was when back. Like, I'm amazed Hulu brought it back. What was your thoughts when that happened, John? And it'd been a decade, and suddenly it's like,
I thought it was going to be difficult for that because it was so of the time. Aqua Teen Hunger Force is so of the that sort of glib understanding about how the internet was working and how we had access to information, and that sounds like bullshit, and they're saying all these crazy things. Meatball was the absolute kind of almost like the Porky Pig character, and he's completely naive and believes everything. Shake was like the ultimate cynic, and then you had this sort of highbrow intellectual. That really was of the time, so I didn't really think it would work, and yet what they did was they grew them up a little bit. And so each one of the characters had a little bit more worldliness to it. So by bringing it back, they did a really smart thing with how they did that. And I think that was really, really clever. And one of the things that I do like about what Hulu did was that it allowed the characters of Futurama to exist in a world where Fry and Leela actually have a relationship, and he's not still chasing after her. And he's not, that it actually is something, and that Fry sort of found a level of, for lack of a term, cool, where he's still an idiot, but he has a level of understanding because he's been in love now, and Leela's cool, so he's doing things like that. They're actually showing him as a much more mature character, and I really love and think that's fantastic. So each time that if you're going to bring these characters back, if you're going to do a reboot, like when we did Voltron Force, my goal at that point was to say, what would Keith have been doing during that period of time? So we talked with the writers, and I said, I really want Keith not to be there in the first episode. I want everybody to go, where's Keith? So that we can run this idea that Keith was always that character that was he's the Ronin amongst them, he's gonna join with the team, but he's that guy who's got an agenda that goes beyond that. So even if they shut down Voltron, which they had done, that was the conceit in our story, that the Lions have been retired, so the other guys are now working undercover, which we don't know at first, but Keith is gone. That's a really nice way to grow the characters, So we started off with Keith having the mullet, and then he gets his hair cut. So it's the idea, okay, this is Keith in the modern age. Acknowledging the past and moving towards the future is the way to make those kind of reboots work. If you just start telling the same story again, it's not great. It just becomes derivative. And it feels like, so the first two episodes of Futurama, I felt were incredibly derivative of what had been done before. And then all of a sudden it found it's stepping. I found like, well, oh, cool. They're a little more grown up. They're actually reacting differently. Bender's not saying the same things. He's learned from those things, so he's saying things differently. And that's a really positive thing.
Well, but I'll be honest, man. I don't think they could have jumped. You had to have at least an episode of kind of it being derivative, I think, for it to work.
Yeah, I agree. I know why they did it, and I agree with you. Just speaking sort of from a meta concept of, saying, gosh, I would have loved them to be really bold and go, this is the new Futurama, but I'm with you. Who's going, we spent a shit ton of money on this. Give us some Futurama first, right? Give us a couple episodes that makes everybody go, this is Futurama. And then, I need a good news, everyone. I can't, just have it without that, right? So, yeah, no, and I get it. But I was really happy to see that they did allow the characters to grow. That was really important.
I just frankly want more.
Yeah, me too, brother. I want the comic back.
Season
I want
12
to get the comic. I loved how, like I say, I worked on many, many animated shows, but none really used a comic as this beautiful springboard towards, we're off season right now, but don't worry, we've still got some seasons going in the comic. That was unique to Futurama. We really, I know I can speak for myself and James Lloyd and a lot of the people who, artistically were involved in that show. It was important to us that it looked like the show, that it played like the show. Ian Boothby, one of the writers, and Eric Rogers, they were big fans, and I think Ian had written a couple of episodes for the show, done some pitches. So there was a real concentrated effort to say, this is a continuance, rather than oh, look, we're doing, Madcap Adventures of the Futurama Gang. Each time we would make reference to some of the episodes, one of my favorite is Jurassic Park, Fry's dog, to get a chance to actually draw him in the comic. It's amazing, where you can actually say, oh, cool, that existed, and now it's part of this
Look,
continuity.
no, I don't like that episode.
You don't? Oh, man.
I love
You're
that
heartless.
episode. I love that episode, but I don't like that episode. You feel me?
Yeah.
You feel me?
Dude,
I love that
yeah,
episode.
No, I do.
But
I
no.
feel like you're feeling me.
Yeah, Jurassic Park and
yeah,
the one with
that's like everybody asks me at the Comic Cons what's my favorite episode. It's always Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
It's just that scene with the pizza owner, feeding him pizza for years, and the dog sitting out there waiting for Fry to come back. If you've ever been a pet one, if you've ever owned a dog, you know what that feels like. I'm even just talking about it now. I can feel a lump in my throat growing. It's just, it's one of the things that was probably the happiest associated with anything to do with Futurama, was the fact that they showed you this fantastic world, this crazy sardonic world, this satirical, funny world that had so much heart. And The Simpsons the same way. When I first started working on The Simpsons, I would have parents say to me, oh, I'd never let my kid watch that show. And I said, well, you're doing them a disservice. We don't live in a world of the Brady Bunch. We live in a world actually of The Simpsons. The kids are lippy. They do say these things. But Marge is one of the most caring, beautiful mothers in the world. It doesn't matter what Bart does. You're my little guy. Homer would throw himself through a piece of plate glass to save his kids. Like, they are a family that is truly in love with one another and put up with the idiosyncrasies of one another and know the faults of one another. But if you notice, every single time when push comes to shove, they have each other's backs. Also, one of my favorite lines in The Simpsons, I'm just going to share it with you right now. Homer's on the cherry picker and it's going into Lake Springfield and he's going to die. And he looks up and he goes, I don't know if I've always believed in you or if you're even up there, but if you are, Superman, save me. That's genius. I'm sorry. That's genius.
You got a chance to work a good deal on that character, man. Were you a fan of Superman long before you ever got a chance to work on him?
Yeah, he was always my guy. I liked Batman as a kid. I mean, everybody, I think, loves Batman when it first started. We all understand the revenge fantasy and, and the idea that he's human and he got himself to that level, But for me, Superman probably began to mean more to me as a teenager when I started to realize that, there's a lot of things that are out of control in this world that we have no ability to control. And given the ability to control them, would we? Is it our right to do that? And to have this character who could, burn the world down if you wanted to, or take over, or even just be a massively successful athlete, and make millions and millions of dollars. Anything he could have done and profited for himself. Instead, he chooses by the introduction of this idea, this ethics. I don't say morality because morality can be taken into different things, but ethics that his parents gave him. He takes crap from a boss every single day just so you can be close to the teletype or the wire service or whatever it is, whatever generation you're in, so that you can help people. That idea that given absolute power that you would do the absolute right thing. Oh my gosh, they just appealed to me in such a beautiful way. I really love the idea that if I could change things, I would, and I want to believe that in myself. Then when I had a kid, I used to always start to see myself as Superman. Suddenly I was Jor-El. I'm going, oh Jesus, I gotta send this kid out with these ideas, that hopefully, I'm in giving him this idea to be a better person, that to not just look out for himself, but with great power comes great responsibility, a la Spider-Man. And Superman always says, you're much stronger than you think. Superman could fix everything, but he wants to be an example. And I love that. I love what Alex Ross did with Peace on Earth, that, when he does try to make changes, the Earth doesn't always want that, right? It's not his job to make those changes. It's his job to try and protect people when he can and to inspire them to be better. That one girl in All-Star Superman, again, Grant Morrison, genius moment. She's having this mental breakdown. She's trying to contact her psychologist. You see Superman flying through the city, doing all these great things. The whole time he's listening to her. You can hear it in the dialogue. And he realizes she's about to jump off a building. And he lands behind her and he grabs her and he goes, your therapist is actually busy. He can't help you, but you're much stronger than you think. I mean, as I'm telling you, I'm getting goosebumps again. Those kind of moments, that idea, that's Superman, right? And, I love that idea so much, that idea that says, you know, I'm challenged by these things, but gosh, I have so many abilities that are beyond mortal men. Maybe I should try and help.
And it's funny because, look, when we had Fred Kennedy on, and shout out to Fred, man, great dude. I think we've got him booked coming up here soon. If not, we need maybe, I don't know. Look, I got to talk to Fred. Maybe I'll make Scott talk to Fred. I don't know. Like because he's got some stuff coming up we're going to be discussing. But at the end of his interview, he says, I feel like anybody that hates Superman was hurt at some point by someone terribly.
Yeah.
I ended his interview, okay? Now, mind you, we've been going like an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes at that point. It was good. The interview needed to end, man. We've been going a while, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, with that statement, it made me look at Superman, and I've read several things since that particular quest, and it's made me have a different view of it, because I think the point you make is completely accurate. It's the fact of someone that look, if someone disagreed with them, they could go, no. And that's all it would take for that person to go away. Like, just no. And no effort. But still within that character and that being is like, no, I must not do those. Like, he's not that person. And I think it is a great example as far as through, look, I'm sorry, it's mythology to a certain degree at this point, in my opinion. That is someone.
Well, it is mythology, and I mean, you know, we've had it in several instances. But I think the thing with Superman is that he also doesn't have to disagree. He might even agree, but he's still not going to do it, because he understands that in doing that, he takes away free will and he takes away choice. And the most important gift we have, beyond theology, beyond metaphysics or any of those things, but the most important gift that all of us have is the gift of free will, to say, I can do this terrible thing, but I choose not to, because I know it's a terrible thing. I can do this great thing, but I choose to because it's a great thing. Our ability to make that distinction is the thing that makes us human, and it's the thing that makes Superman man first, super second.
You know, going from what you're talking about, like you said, Superman he's very inspirational, right? And I can tell that he's really inspired you yourself.
Very much so. I have him on my arm.
That's awesome. So I know you go to a lot of, like you said, you did 25 shows last year.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for over 20 years, correct?
Almost 30.
Yeah. So in all that time, you were, I'm sure, had times where you have kids that come up to you, or even adults that have come up to you and asked you for, asked you questions and stuff like that. Is that in itself for you inspirational? Showing that you're inspiring others?
It's a great question, Scott. I think it's probably the reason I do Comic-Cons as much as I do. There was a while, years and years ago, I stopped doing them for a little while because I felt that the emphasis was too much on the movies and it wasn't on the comics anymore. And I lost a taste for doing them because I was at San Diego Comic-Con. I don't want to go into the story too much, but I was doing a signing with a very, very well-known writer and artist, and one of the, like known to the point of the entire world knows this gentleman's work. And one of the what you call it, helpers came up and said, "Can we get you guys to move over here? We need to make a line for Harold and Kumar." And I love the Harold and Kumar films, just, no derisiveness to them, but I was so offended that this pinnacle of our industry, this individual who had done so much, was being so relegated to the idea that they're in the way of a film, that I stopped doing them. And it wasn't until a few years later where I was out, doing just a guest appearance thing. It was actually for Voltron. So I was doing a directing guesting appearance, and somebody was talking to me about comics again. And I realized that not everybody feels that way, and that I had done that to myself, that I had sort of punished myself by taking myself out of these things into myself. It's not about those things. It's not about, that was me. I was offended more for, this incredible person who I admired greatly and whose work had moved me so dramatically that I found myself going like, oh, people aren't getting it anymore. But that was foolish and silly. So when I went back to start doing Comic Cons, ironically, because, I've been doing it 30 years now, suddenly I was an old guy, so I was this old, statesman. And these kids are going, well, I grew up on your work. And I'm looking at this guy's 20 years old. I'm going, Jesus, what the hell happened? Right? But that was wonderful. It was wonderful because I was still working during that period of time. I was still doing things like Scooby-Doo and Dexter's Laboratory and Futurama and Simpsons. And, I've always been this kind of journeyman guy who will take on any job. And I love doing it because with my animation background, I love challenging myself to draw in different styles and do these things. So I never looked at any job as anything beneath me. I always looked at it as, oh, this is fun and that's a great script. Let's do it. Occasionally I'd find a script I didn't love a whole bunch. So I'd say to the editor, do you mind if I make some notes? And, and we go back and forth with the writer. And if they were, open to it, great. If they weren't, that's okay too. I wasn't offended. I just wouldn't do the book. But if they were, then, we'd do those things. So I started to look at it differently where I thought, your love of comics and your love of this medium shouldn't stop you from meeting the people that love them too. So when I started going back to Comic Cons a bunch of years back, probably almost 10 years now, I just fell in love with the whole experience. And I loved being one of the elder statesmen of this world and having people talking about, I was in Belgium, I think I was telling you, and I had this guy say, hey, how much do you charge for signatures on comics? I personally don't charge. Other artists do, and no diss to them, because I charge for sketches. The emphasis for me is always to be sketches. So doing a cover signing is not a thing. But the guy said, can you sign the comic for me? And I said, well, how many you got? And he goes, I have everything you've ever done. And he rolled out this dolly with boxes and I'd forgotten. I'd been doing this for 30 years. There are a lot of comics. And he had every single comic I'd ever done. And I first was thinking I should charge him. And then I thought, no, he has every one of my comics. He's a fan, right? So yeah, I signed them all, and it was amazing and very sobering. Where you realize, gosh, I've been doing this a long time, and is a very large contribution to this world that I've been part of. That's something I wanted to do all my whole life. So I feel very blessed.
Stop making like 6 different questions come to my head. Because you totally just did, John, right? So listen, the first one's easy. The first one's a simple one. How long did it take you to sign all of that?
I'd say it was close to half an hour. It was a lot, and I was trying to please him because I, not to be self-aggrandizing, but I had a lineup of people who wanted sketches. Belgium is a really, really cool place because the Comic-Con is so large in Ghent that it's so big that they actually divvy cosplay up into sections. So the Star Wars people over here, Star Trek people over here, Hobbit people over here, like it's that big. They actually have to break things up into categories. So the fans that come out there are hardcore. And so I had this big lineup of people who were wanting sketches and that. So I was trying to go as quickly as I can. And it still took me about 30 minutes to do them because I'd forgotten how many, just little things, like a backup story in Cartoon Network of the Galaxy Trio. And this guy had that, so, yeah.
All right. So on another note then, I'm curious, man, with everything you've worked on, you've had a chance to work on a lot of properties from DC. You've done Futurama. You've done a bunch of stuff from Cartoon Network. But I've looked through, and it doesn't seem like you've done a whole lot, if any, for Marvel.
Yeah, I did one Marvel pinup. I think it was a Hulk pinup. I think that was years and years ago. I don't even know if it got published. I was talking with Paul Jenkins, if you know, he did the Wolverine Origin, and he and I were pitching a couple things to Marvel. It's Marvel has a very different sort of way of doing things, and not good or bad. It's just different, and so I don't know if I was ever going to be a good match for them. I always want the ability to have a fairly polished script that I can then kind of direct as far as the visuals go. And Marvel has, it's a much more loosey-goosey. They sort of send you an outline kind of thing. So then you'll do a bunch of work and then the writer comes in and you kind of go for back and forth. And as a journeyman guy like myself, I don't know if that's a great fit for me, but I did do Superman vs. Lobo with David McElhenney, and he did it Marvel style, where he sent me, a page. This is what's going to happen on this page. You break it down, and I'll put the dialogue in. And I loved it. We got nominated for an Eisner. This actually Superman tattoo I have here is from the splash page where he's told he can never walk the earth again. Everybody does Superman like this. I love the fact that it was Superman depressed. So I did love it, but it's just each time that I kind of reached or approached by Marvel. It was always I want to put this as diplomatically as I can. They have a very different sort of way of doing things, and you have to do a lot to kind of get forward there. And by that point, I was fairly into my career, and I was going like, I don't think I have to prove myself this way, So maybe that was arrogance on my part, and I can certainly own that. But I just, to the point where I was going like, I'm not going to jump through a million hoops here. I did a couple of drawings of, what I want to do here. And if you're not familiar with my work, I don't really want to be the person that has to make you that way.
Well, then let's disregard all that, and let's say the hoops didn't exist. So let's say you had a chance to just work on whatever Marvel character that you personally chose to. What are your your top 2-3 characters from Marvel that you would like?
Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four #1. Love the Fantastic Four. If anybody said to me from Marvel, you want to do Fantastic Four, I'd be all over it. I'd love to write it and draw it. But if they just said draw it, man, I'd be into that. I love those characters so much. Probably, I would love to go back to Morbius, the way that he was done in the 1970s, where he had the addiction. And I think Morbius is a story that could be told in such a really cool, haunting way. I'd love to kind of use a Gene Colan kind of style of brushwork, and really make it very theatrical and make Morbius much more of a sympathetic character than they've done. This idea of constantly making Morbius like this kind of action hero-y guy with the shirt open and all that. I'm just like, you're missing the whole point. He's very tortured, and I would love to do that. And I guess the third one would be Daredevil. I love Daredevil. I love the Frank Miller Daredevil stuff. I love the David Mack work on Daredevil. I love, there's been so many great runs of what Daredevil has done. Kerry Nord is a dear friend of mine, and his run on Daredevil was incredible. There's Chris Sammy. There's so many guys that have drawn him, and I think that's one of those things that if I was given an opportunity, and I look at some of those David Mazzucchelli drawings, I would love to enter that world of Daredevil, where you're doing it very gritty, very realistic, where he's not, jumping around in these Spider-Man type poses. I want Daredevil to look very physical and very capable, but not capable of things beyond reason, And sometimes when Daredevil gets drawn, where he's whipping these things around, I don't think that serves the character. Spider-Man for sure. Spider-Man has he's been irradiated, and so he has these powers. But Daredevil is a character that I think it needs to work in a sense of realism. And when he goes too fantastic, I don't buy it that much, But when I look at some of the stuff that's been done, like when I look at those Mazzucchelli things where he's jumping across to a building, and the building just seems slightly out of reach, and you're going, he could fall. I love that. I love that Daredevil is still physically a human. Yes, he has these enhanced powers. Those enhanced powers don't change his physical abilities. So he has limitations, and I love that. The Fantastic Four, because the idea of this family that doesn't get along all the time and fights and while they're in the middle of a battle, oh my God. The Stan Lee, Jack Kirby stuff, obviously beautiful. The John Byrne run, when Waringo was drawing it, oh my God, and Mark Waid, there's just been so many moments where the Fantastic Four has been, created this idea that we don't all get along, we're going to fight. Reed and Ben have known each other forever, and the bottom line is Reed feels guilty and Ben feels angry. There's always that, that anger. And no matter what Reed tries to do, Ben always knows that it's Reed's fuck up who did this to him, right? And all the great things and Ben accepting himself and everything like that. The first time that Ben gets turned back human, what's the first thing he does? He's like, woohoo! He's happy, right? So even though he says, yeah, I accept myself as this, he never really does, and that resentment towards Reed doesn't have to be visceral. It doesn't have to be, I hate you or anything, but it's always an underpinning of going, if I'd never met you, yeah, we have this beautiful life, but this would never have happened to me.
So I gotta ask then, which one do you think is going to disappoint you more? Daredevil Born Again or the Fantastic Four movie that Marvel's about to do?
Well,
yeah, I asked it like that. I did.
I hope neither. I think Daredevil Born Again did a very smart thing. They went back to the Netflix cast. They obviously thought that they could do something different. I think when Daredevil showed up on She-Hulk, it was not the Daredevil everybody knew. And had they said that was a prequel story and that was him in the yellow and red, I could see him being a little more, that guy. But Netflix had done such a phenomenal job on Daredevil. Such a phenomenal job of really showing why that character is unique and cool, and like the hallway scene and all that stuff. You know, he takes the hits and he feels the hits. You know, and you know, Wolverine's supposed to be the same way. Wolverine is, yeah, he can cure, but he still feels it. You know, but he seems to go into these things and never be stopped, right? Whereas Daredevil, you know, you get stopped. So when they went back and they brought back the wonderful actor who plays Foggy Nelson and Deborah Mall as Karen Page, and you know, of course, Vincent D'Onofrio is just genius as the Kingpin. They just can't do anything wrong. You'd really have to go out of your way to screw that up. So I don't really have any feelings that I'll be disappointed with that, and I'm hoping that they kind of do the Frank Miller story a little bit, because Born Again is one of the things that, you know, that was seminal in my life. You know, seeing that and seeing, you know, Daredevil sort of, you know, the lengths to which he could forgive, you know, after everything Karen Page did, and he still rescued her and he still loves her, and that, like, that's that thing that makes Daredevil so freaking unique. You can call it his Catholic guilt, you can call it whatever you want. He's just that guy. He's a lawyer, and he realizes that people are flawed, but at their base they want to do good, you know, and he believes that, you know. That's why he's a defense lawyer, right? So I bought into that so much, and so I'm really hoping for that. Now, Fantastic Four, it's a great cast, you know, and I like the director very much. My feeling is, like, they're talking about doing it, it's an alternate Earth Fantastic Four. I kind of wish that they had just done a 1960s Fantastic Four. It's the only way that the idea that a guy could launch a rocket without everybody knowing it would work, you know. And you know, they get lost out in space, you know, in you know, the Forbidden Zone or whatever, not Forbidden Zone, the Negative Zone, and you know, they come back and they haven't aged. You know, that's a cool story. You know, you could even write it into the, and they had little Easter eggs about Fantastic Four. That's a cool story where, you know, they come back and now the world is overtaken with people like them. You know, there was a little short period of time. Doctor Strange says, "Didn't you guys have a hit? Weren't you guys having a hit?" He's making a reference to the Beatles, the Fab Four, right? But he goes, weren't you guys big in the '60s? That line alone could sell that whole thing. Weren't you guys big in the '60s? Yeah. There was a couple of times when the Fantastic Four were heard from, and they disappeared, and you never heard from them again. And then all of a sudden they come back and they haven't aged a day, and he's one of the smartest men in the world. I don't know. That could be an amazing story, especially with Tony Stark being gone now. You need the smartest man in the world again.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, no, that would be genius if they made it to where they, like, and I my hope for the Fantastic Four film is low. And like, then bring Doom along and make it to where you have like Annihilus as the villain in that to some degree.
Yeah.
Right.
Love Annihilus.
And then yeah, man, because it annoys me with every Fantastic Four film how much they're like, let's go to Doom. Calm down. Don't go to Doom yet.
Yeah, to me, Doom doesn't have to be in the first film. You know, I get it, you know, but I mean, the first villain they fought was the Mole Man. I mean, you know, the unfortunate thing was the Incredibles did sort of a Mole Man thing, and I know that prevented Tim Story and those guys from doing the Mole Man story. That's what they wanted to do at first, so they went to Doom. I kind of love the second film where Doom takes the powers of the Silver Surfer. That was very in line with the Jack Kirby stuff, but the rest of the film sort of fell apart. They just didn't have the legs it needed. I think that with the things that have happened with Marvel in the last little while, Kevin Feige is a very, very bright guy, and he's their goal was to have like two Marvel films out a year. Well, that has stopped because they're actually working on quality now, and that's important. You know, Ant-Man, I thought the latest one was good, but it was so obvious that it was shot on soundstage. It was so obvious that there was lacking in its sort of interaction. There's a lot of opportunity for it to be something better than it could be, but they were shooting during COVID, and I understand that, you know, all the shortcomings that would provide. I think with the Fantastic Four, the idea of casting Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards is really cool. It's you know, I know everybody wanted John Krasinski, and I love what he did in Doctor Strange, but I also felt that even physically, he looks a bit like Doctor Strange. He looks a bit like Tony Stark. I wanted to see somebody different. And Pedro Pascal has, you know, just not only his ethnicity, but his construction of his face is different. You know, so we're going to see a Reed Richards that is distinctly different from what we've seen before. And when I saw Krasinski come out, even with the beard, I went, oh, God, he looks a lot like the archetype of the Marvel smart guy, you know? So I love that it's Pascal and that he's an opportunity to, you know, do Reed Richards in a way that the first time you see Reed Richards as a kid, I'd never seen a superhero with white walls on his side. That seemed like an old guy to me. And suddenly he's this super smart guy, and he can stretch and do all these things. And when John Byrne took him over, the things he did with him, and the understanding of science and how it could apply to it. Oh, it was amazing.
And I'm curious to see Pedro play that, man. I think it is a very interesting cast that they've chosen. I hope
it's a cool bit of casting, yeah.
I just hope they do it justice, because as somebody when it comes to comics, let's be honest, like, people are typically either Marvel or DC. You don't find someone that's like, I just love them both. No, I mean, you find,
but, that's
well,
right, yeah.
but man, come on, you're more of a DC guy just through this whole
if I push comes to shove, yes.
Yeah,
DC are the archetypes.
And I mean, that's fine. That's fine. Everybody has their preference,
Sure.
but there always is that one. And I was always on the Marvel side of things. So that is the one that I've seen them fail to bring to screen to the level that it ever should have been so many times, that I really, 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 I'm just hoping, right? But I'm curious in character anatomy. When you're dealing with that, what do you think as far as how they're dealing in the movies, taking the anatomy of these characters that are from the comics and making it to where it looks like they could appear in the real world? Because, I mean, just the Fantastic Four, that's two pretty rough ones. Hey, this guy's this guy's just going to turn into a rock monster, and this guy can do whatever.
I'll say something Tom Grummett said in a Comic-Con recently. It's not rocks, it's scales. That's one of the things that he always says. Those are platelets. They're scales. Jack Kirby said that himself. It was never supposed to be rocks, but people said that. But anyway, I'll just make that thing. So the key to doing Fantastic Four is to understand it's a science fiction movie, not a superhero movie. That they are science heroes. They are imaginauts. That's how Mark Waid described them, and I love that. So if you do that, if you break it down and you lean more towards an idea of James Cameron, The Abyss, or something very science based, you have an opportunity to do something very different from what people are proclaiming the superhero fatigue and all that exists. It's not a superhero film. They may wear matching outfits, and that's just because they're unstable molecules created by Reed Richards to apply to their individual powers. That works. If you put it that way and you go, okay, that's why they're dressed this way, it's cool. It's not we're wearing superhero outfits. They're wearing outfits that allow him to stretch. They're wearing outfits that allow him to turn into fire, for her to turn invisible. These unstable molecules, which is absurd from science, and you can obviously break it down into a much more modern scientific technique. But the idea that that's why they're wearing them, and it's a science fiction movie, it could be freaking amazing. It could be Terminator 2. It could be this thing where you go, holy, like this is science. He's not saying we've got to save the city. They're going, we have a responsibility, and it's based on this. Reed Richards is pragmatic. He's not an idealist, right? And so, Robert Downey Jr. was pragmatic, but he still had a sense of idealism in Tony Stark. That has to be excised. Reed Richards is pragmatic. The only way that we can continue to do what we do is to save the world. Not, I have to save the world because it's the right thing to do. He's got that, and that's where Johnny comes in, and that's where Sue comes in. There is conscience, but Reed is, what do we do to make sure I can keep working on my stuff? That's really what he is, he doesn't want to be disrupted. And once you do that, you're doing a story about a conflict. They're the emotional conscience. Ben is the tragedy of his thinking, and he needs to be constantly reminded of that. And that's what his family does. It's an amazing science fiction story if they do it right.
All I know is through what you just said about Reed Richards' character, it makes me think of the original run of Marvel Zombies, where he's just like, yeah, we're all going to be zombies, so I made you all zombies to eat me.
Right. Look at what Jim Kruger did with X, Marvel X, right? Where Reed had just become to the point where he's wearing Doom's outfit right now because he's going, I did this for far too long. I didn't realize what I had. I was so fixated on what I could get, what I could create, that I didn't realize the ramifications of what could happen. So he's locked himself in Doom's uniform, saying, and he's got this hologram of Sue going like, I blew it. That's fucking awesome, right? You know, like it shows that Reed Richards has that capacity, but it's going to take something dramatic for that thing. When Reed Richards defeats Galactus, that's not him going, I saved the world. He's going, I beat the fucking baddest guy in the universe because I'm smarter. That's cool.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're going to see in this movie.
I hope so. Yeah, I really want to see that. I love the fact they're actually doing Galactus in the uniform, in the outfit. Like, I'm a Kirby guy, so wow, I can't wait to see that on screen.
Yeah, that's going to be brilliant.
Well, and I think they've plotted to where that's acceptable. Because when they initially did the Fantastic Four film, I think if you'd have made Galactus in his true form, people would have been like, what? Shut up.
They weren't ready for it. I don't think, like, not to interrupt, I apologize, but, the casting of that first Fantastic Four movie, the stretching of Reed, all that stuff was so childish. He didn't have any basis in science. Sue, suddenly, turning invisible, her clothes dropping out, all that stuff. It was just so weirdly salacious and weird. And, like Vanessa Kirby, I love, first of all, that they cast adults. I didn't love the young, ultimate version of the Fantastic Four. It felt very of the time. So they're adults, they're grown-ups, and they understand the ramifications of what they need to do. And Reed would only be the only person that struggles with that because he doesn't have that same sense of right and wrong. I can see Reed just going, well, there is no right and wrong. There is just action and inaction, sort of thing, right? And that would be his thing because this wrong may result in a right. And you're going, yeah, but it's still fucking wrong, And so having the conscience, having Sue, instead of going, Reed, why won't you spend time with me? She's actually going, dude, what the hell? That's how, John Byrne wrote her, and that sort of an understanding of that Sue is the most powerful one of them all. She could silence Reed in a moment. And everybody's wondering why she puts up with it. She's there to make sure he doesn't do something fucking horrible.
Yeah, that's like, I love the moment between her and Reed in Civil War where, and she leaves the whole note. But all I know is I hope when they get to Secret Wars, there are two Reed Richards.
I definitely want to see Lone Grufford coming in there and Jessica Alba. Yeah,
no. I want the Maker.
Oh, the Maker. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I want the evil.
I like the Beyonder to look like the Michael Jackson Beyonder when they first did it.
Yeah. I totally agree with that one too.
I just need that evil SOB, that's like, I'm a genius, and I decided to hell with y'all, and just because that's
they kind of even hinted at that a little bit in Doctor Strange and the other one where they were kind of giving the idea that Strange might have gone dark, and that Reed had was capable of actually making that kind of a decision, So I kind of love that. I'm sure you guys noticed that Easter egg that when he appears, with the screen, that he was using Doom's technology, right?
Yeah.
So they're already sort of implying that Reed was a little sketchy in taking Doom's technology to use it, So.
Are they? Wait, no, I didn't quite catch all of that to that level. I did kind of catch the Doom.
Well, remember when he appears in Doctor Strange, he opens that portal. That's Doom, Doctor Doom technology, right? When he drops in, that's not Reed technology. That was Doctor Doom technology. So he's taking Victor's technology and landing in that. When I saw that, I went, that's Doctor Doom technology. What are we saying about this Reed Richards? You know what I mean? So they were already hinting on the idea that, he's ambiguous in his ethics.
Well, and can I say, with what Scarlet Witch did to him within that film, isn't it probable that could disfigure him to some capacity to where he couldn't properly morph back, and he has to wear a helmet, and maybe he will be back for another film. It'll just be as the bad guy.
I hadn't even thought about that, but I love that idea. Like that, if you can imagine, one of the things that they're playing with, I think it's John Hickman. They're playing with the idea that Reed his intellect actually permeates through his entire body now, since he's elastic, right? So his brain essentially, so he can take his hand and come up with multiple fingers and stuff like that, because he's actually that malleable. So there is the opportunity that even if she tore him apart, that if he could reconstruct himself, the idea that his consciousness exists in every single part of his elasticity now. So there is an opportunity for that, but that's pretty big, heady stuff from Marvel film. Who knows? We'll see.
That's interesting.
I just want the maker, John. I can't
I know you
like
did.
I
I'm
can't
taking off when you're throwing down, Daddy-O.
I can't. There's part of me that's like I want people to get an awesome Reed Richards, who is the Reed
Yeah.
Richards that you just exactly described, who is just action in action. But then he's got Sue like, hey, and he's like,
Well,
okay,
listen,
baby,
and
all
even
right,
Johnny to a large degree.
sorry.
Johnny
Right.
has an effect on Reed that's really quite an interesting dynamic. I'm from a family of 6 kids, and the effect I can have on my elder brother is quite fascinating because he might dismiss my other 2 brothers, but he'll listen to me because I think differently than they do. So he's heard the same thing, and suddenly, because I'm more of an artist and that sort of thing, I can reach to him, and I can see the same thing with Johnny, where Johnny could say like, Reed, what the hell, right? And that would have an effect on him because at one point Reed wanted to be a Johnny. He wanted to be that guy, but he's the nerd guy, right? So suddenly there's this guy he's hanging around with, he's the cool guy, and he's younger and he gets the babes and that, and so Reed's kind of going, well, maybe what he's saying has some, there's still that kind of nerdism that could play into that, and I think that'd be kind of a neat little touch to put in there too. So yeah, I mean, gosh, I wish I was directing a Fantastic Four movie. I did a pitch for a Green Lantern movie once.
For a what movie?
Green Lantern, before the Ryan Reynolds one. I was working in an animation studio, and I probably, it'd be improper for me to say who, but very high up in Warner Bros. Came and he was looking for pitches, and I pitched a Green Lantern movie, and he said, this is really out there. And I was going, yeah, it's a cosmic story. Green Lantern, it shouldn't be an Earth story, not for the first 4 years. Hal Jordan should be lost in space doing all these things, and then when he comes back, he first comes back as Green Lantern. So nobody knows that Hal Jordan's even alive. So when Hal Jordan comes back, it's been about a year where Green Lantern's out. So you don't have, look, Hal Jordan's back at the same time as Green Lantern. He eventually finds his way back to Hal Jordan, but he's been Green Lantern for 4 years in space, being a space cop. So when he gets back to Earth, he's got to kind of relearn humanity and relearn the rules and that. And when he finally kind of gets there, he brings Hal Jordan back. And so now Hal Jordan is a very separate entity from Green Lantern. And that was sort of the pitch I went, but he liked the idea, but he said, oh, that feels like it's 3 or 4 films. And I said, yeah, I was kind of going for that. But
Yeah.
Sounds really cool, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
It is what it is.
look, I'd have been down to have Reynolds as the Green Lantern too, but that would have been a way because I think that was a problem. And I wonder, what do you think of that?
I was wanted Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is Hal Jordan. He's that cocky pilot, like the character he played in, even in Maverick, like I love Hal Jordan being a few years on there. I'd love to see Tom Cruise as Green Lantern. I just think he's Hal Jordan all over the place. Just that cocky smile, that giggle that he does, it all feels like Hal Jordan to me.
I'm amazed that man hasn't ended up in a comic book film at this point in some capacity as something, to be real honest. Like it's quite amazing, man. But I'm curious into seeing what you have as far as the evolution of comic book films. What do you think about that from coming from, early Christopher Reeve Superman, the Batman to what we have now? And really, Man of Steel. I get the Batman.
Yeah.
I get the Batman. I do. I get that one. But
I'll tell you why I love Man of Steel.
Isn't that the one where he picked up an island of kryptonite?
No, that's the Brandon Ruth one. No, that's Superman Returns.
Okay.
Man of Steel's the one with Henry Cavill. The first one with Henry Cavill, where Kevin Costner's his dad, and everybody mocks the idea they let his dad die in the tornado.
Yeah. Okay.
So the reason I love Man of Steel, first of all, as a filmmaker myself, the cinematography on that film is one of the finest looking superhero films ever made. It's genius. His flight scenes look seamless. There's no, that's a CGI Henry Cavill. It's him doing it, and they composite him in these scenes. Zack Snyder did something in that film he'd never done before, which was, sort of rein in the idea of these slow motion moves and all that sort of thing. And he just told a beautiful, succinct film about what it would be like if you were an alien who would crash land on Earth, and how that would change the very fabric of society. If people found out that we're not alone on the Earth, that we have one of these guys who's been living amongst us, and now there's a bunch of other guys coming to get him. And like, I love the way he did all the stuff with the television news and how they were commenting on what it means to be a Superman. And through all that is this guy just trying to do the right thing, right? And it's so clever that led into Batman v Superman, which was also another commentary. I just love the fact that they played this sort of reluctant idea that he was going, sure, I'd love to put on a suit. And, you know, like, there's a beautiful, I mean, I love the Donner Superman. Fantastic. When he jumps out and he goes, hey, man, that's a nice outfit. And he flies up and nobody, woo, you know, like, no. The minute a man flies in front of you, you're like, what the hell just happened, right? And that did that. That film did that. It said, what would it be like if Superman really did exist? If suddenly he's landing there and these other guys are coming from another planet, he's trying to defend our planet against them. Of course, there would be thousands of casualties. Of course, you're talking like massive destruction. You know, like, he's brand new at this, and he's taking on a guy who's trained, you know, but he's got heart and he's got this love and this need, and he's going, Krypton had its chance. I'm attached to this now. You know, and Krypton brought that to themselves. I can't let you do this. There's lots of people would go, you know, it'd be great to have Krypton back. Let's do this. You know, I can actually, you know, have an intimate relationship with this chick because I'm Kryptonian, she's Kryptonian. All that could have worked out great for him. But he chose to choose the Earth. And after all the shitty things that the Earth had done to him, he still did that. It's a brilliant, brilliant film. And it gets crapped on a lot because people keep expecting him to act like Superman. It's first-year Superman. He puts the outfit on and he's fighting Zod. He's got no experience at all. He doesn't even really know how to fight. He just knows how to punch hard, right? And when they attack his mom and he's going, you dare attack my mother, you see the passion, the resolve to which will become that Superman. And when he finally has to kill Zod, it's the last thing he wants to do. But Zod is saying, I will never stop. He's going, stop. He's going, never. So he goes, bang. That's what makes him say, I'll never kill again. A lot of people got that wrong. They're going like, Superman doesn't kill him. I'm going, not yet. But there, it had to happen for him to go, that affected me so dramatically. I will never do this again. You know, and it's a brilliant film. I think Zack Snyder knocked it out of the park on that film.
Yeah, just look, there's several of those questionnaires. Y'all can go check them out, like I said, on the Patreon. I know several people have answered that on the other end, which I think it's funny. You still named another Superman film as far as for the least, which that being Steel. I think Steel gets too much hate.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing about Steel. I thought the casting of Shaquille O'Neal was genius because I always saw John Henry as a very big guy, right? And when I read, you know, and this probably prejudiced a little bit of my seeing it, but I was reading, you know, I've always been a big, you know, follower of the Hollywood Reporter and Variety and that. And I was reading with the director, and he was saying, I think it's absurd to have him fly. Well, look how well Jon Favreau made Iron Man fly. You know, like, you don't have to fly like Superman. You can fly in a suit, right? When you remove the idea of the Superman aspect of it, that there's no sign of it, it doesn't make sense as a character, unless you're doing Iron Man. You could have done Iron Man then. You could have been that, right? But having him walk around and come around like he's 7 feet tall, come around a corner to stop the crime, that's absurd, right? Having him land to stop the crime in a flight suit, that makes sense. So when you don't understand the very nature of Steel and what his powers are and what his abilities are, and you harp, it's like John what is his name? John Peters saying, you know, Superman shouldn't fly. That's absurd. Like, then don't do Superman. Don't do Steel if he's not flying. Don't do Steel if he doesn't have the idea that the S is an homage to Superman. You don't even, if you're worried about rights, it's him crawling out of the rubble after this superhero saved them, and he puts an S on it as for Superman. There's a million ways to do it without acknowledging Superman, but to not acknowledge it at all and just say this guy came up with this Iron Man suit and like he worked in the army and all these things that don't connect the idea of what the inspiration is, then you don't have any inspiration. And now it's just, you know, yeah, it was not a terrible movie, but it didn't have any heart. You know, it just, I couldn't relate to it in any way, shape, or form. Now that could also be because, you know, I'm a Superman guy.
So wait, you're telling me when they had the rights to do Steel, they could not acknowledge Superman?
Carolco, it's an entirely different company. They bought the rights to Superman, or bought the rights to Steel as a separate deal. So they weren't even allowed to mention Superman in it.
but My
He's
brain.
got a Man of Steel tattoo because that's what Shaquille O'Neal has on his arm, right? So that was their way of getting around it. They showed that thing, but he already had that. That was, he's a big Superman fan. But the fact that they didn't mention it was a lower budget film. They didn't have the rights. The rights to Superman were all tied up with the Salkinds at that point, so nobody could use Superman without express permission, and you had to pay a fortune, right? Well, they wanted to pay a fortune to try and do a film, so they certainly didn't want to pay for Superman. So it is what it is.
Interesting.
Anyway, guys, I'm getting a little tight on time.
No, that's fine, man. You just kind of blew my brain with that last one, Sean. And I know we do need to wrap because I'll be real honest, I need to hit the restroom, man. I ain't gonna lie. Right. But I mean, hey, look, man. Sometimes it happens. Nature calls, you got to go. But before nature calls, what I want to let you all know out there, right? Just check all the links in the description. You can check out John's work. Now, besides that, though, if you've gotten here and you've enjoyed this question with John, what I want you to do, right, is I want you to send him a Cyclops. Make sure it's all nice, right? A nice Cyclops.
Oh, nice.
So, like one that's chill, get him like all good and vibed out so you don't like show up and try to smash John because we ain't trying to do that, right? But you send that Cyclops, right? You send that Cyclops with a 60-ounce medium rare steak with mashed potatoes and some Brussels sprouts, right? To play on the largest screen ever, the Batman. I ain't saying Man of Steel, man. Look, I don't know. Maybe I need to rewatch
I get
it.
that if that's not your thing, but let's face it, the Batman is a stroke.
Matt Reeves. All right, we'll go with the Batman. Right now, if for some reason you haven't enjoyed this particular quest with John and he's annoyed you for some reason or another, right? Like apparently my dog is over it, y'all. I don't know if you hear, but my dog is like this quest needs to end, right? So if you have and you've gotten to this point, one, man, you really shouldn't hate watch stuff. It's not good for your psyche. And I say that knowing you might have just hate watched this. I just want to let y'all know. But if you didn't, what I want you to do, right? What I want you to do is I want you to send the devil, all right, to color really badly for John, right? Right, just to color really badly, endlessly for John while they watch Steel on repeat, right? Yeah, that's what you get to do, John, right? Besides that, right, I just want y'all to do three things, right? One, always give it that thumbs up. Two, always get your comic on. Besides that, have a good night, y'all.
Nice. Cheers, guys.
This has been the questionnaire.
Where's the link?
Thanks for checking out the questionnaire.
In the link below, yes?
I will drop it like it's hot.
That's another party.
It's cool, man. I love it.
The questionnaire. That is all.